Hello and welcome to episode 90 of the Virtual Velo Podcast with me, Emma Martin, and my co-host, Chris Schwenker. Well, the Virtual Velo Podcast, the show that bridges the gap between athlete and avatar, keeping it real in the world of cycling esports. And to start off with, Chris, I have to say it is fantastic to be back after what has been a wonderful holiday break. Thank you so much for letting me have some time off. It was well deserved and well needed after the 2025 that I had. But the Virtual Velo Podcast, we are beginning year number 4. I can't believe that, Chris. And also, we're coming towards the end of our second year together as well on the podcast. It's just amazing.
It's been fun every moment, Emma, really. And it's also really cool to see you doing all these different UCI events. And I point out to my wife and daughter, yeah, it's Emma, that's my podcast co-host. It's a cool thing. But I'm really excited to kick off another year with you interviewing the impactful people in cycling esports. And I think we have a really great guest to kick off 2026.
Yes, I agree with that completely, Chris. And thank you so much for joining us for the first podcast of the new year. Team USA's Nicole Meyer. Welcome, Nicole.
Hi, welcome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely brilliant to see you here. And we always think it's fitting to begin by learning a little bit more about our athlete guests and what they do off the bike before we jump into their racing accomplishments. The nature of cycling esports, I think, also allows athletes to do much more than just race at that high level. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your family, what you do, what you like to do when you're not racing at the very early hours of the morning or late at night when you're on your bike?
Yeah, so I live in California with my husband, and I have a 7-year-old daughter and twin boys that just turned 5. So not so little kids anymore, but still pretty little. Up until about a year and a half ago, I was teaching at San Francisco State University. I was teaching biochemistry there, but some enrollment declines, and I was just an adjunct part-time faculty. So I was kind of the first on the chopping block in terms of enrollment decline, budget cut, that kind of thing. So I took a little break, and then they did have a position again that I could have started teaching, but by then it had been a year off, and it was just kind of better for family life for me to be at home rather than try to rush up to San Francisco and be teaching all day and then coming back home and then having kids, and I was already tired and stuff. So now I'm retired, or I'm on sabbatical or extended maternity leave, one of those things. So I may go back to teaching, but this is working out pretty well.
Or we could say you are transitioning to a full-time athlete status.
Yeah, I don't know that I would go quite that far, but it's certainly a great outlet for me. And yeah, it's a really nice kind of counterbalance to the rest of my day that I spend primarily, as a mom, that kind of thing.
So how do you balance it all? Because we were just having a little chat off air and I think I nearly fell off my chair. Tell our listeners how you balance the life of Nicole Meyer.
Yeah, so I've always been like a pretty early morning person, and, I was teaching. I had to be up in San Francisco by 7:30 or 8 or something. So I ride pretty early in the morning. Like today, City saw me on there. I was doing a team time trial at 3 o'clock. So most every day I'm on the bike like 3:30 or so, and I try to be off by the time my kids wake up about 6. So if I want to get in solid ride, that's kind of the only good time to do it. Theoretically, I could do it later once the kids are at school, but there's always somebody sick, or I'm volunteering at the library, or I have an appointment, or, there's just different things that come up almost every day. So it's predictable to just do it in the morning, and then kind of whatever else happens the rest of the day, I've already done my thing, and I can just focus on what I need to do at home. So
quite often, and I am wondering now, given that you taught biochem, life circumstances cause elite cycling esports athletes to pivot coming from a different sport. Have you always been into cycling, or do you too come from a different sport, or whether that was at collegiate level or a high level before you found cycling esports?
Yeah, so I grew up just playing team sports, not terribly well. I started running in college, and then when I was in my PhD program, I got more competitive into running and half marathons, that kind of thing. And then I got pretty into cycling then as well. I met my now husband early on when I was in grad school, and he had worked at Specialized, and he was really into cycling a lot at that time as well. So just started riding a lot with him and did the local road racing scene like 10, 15 years ago. Did that for a while and thought like, maybe I'll go pro, and then kind of decided to start a family. And I thought once I had kids that my competitive days were probably in the rear mirror, just cycling at a high level takes a significant training volume. And I didn't see how I could spend enough time training to really be competing at a high level anymore. And obviously at this point in my life, I'm not going to pick up and move to Europe and be racing on a World Tour team or something. So when I got married and had kids, I kind of thought like, well, I'll just be like a hobby jogger and that will be fine. But once they turned 2 and I was finally getting a little bit more sleep, I started Zwifting kind of right around that time and realized like, oh, I actually do have time to get in a pretty good amount of training. And yeah, I've just kind of picked it up there.
Yeah, I definitely want to touch on that a little bit. But first, I want to just make the point that once again, I'm the only non-professor on the podcast.
There's a causal relationship between PhDs and cycling esports, Chris. There needs to be some research done.
Either that or I need to go back to school or something. I'm always the dumbest guy on the panel here. But anyway, so just a couple of things just observations, because I want to find out where you fall within this. But even though cycling esports has only been around for about a decade, we're beginning to see some phases or generations of athletes entering the sport. There were the early adopters like the Zwift All-Stars and the KISS Super League. Then the pandemic halted real life racing, and there was an influx of pros and elite racers to Zwift. When things opened up after the pandemic and racing resumed, there were a large group of racers that got hooked and stayed. And we saw the premier division in the Zwift World Series and the popularity of the Sunday Race Club and the potential to earn large prize purses brought in enough.
Yeah, definitely on the later end. My first elite race I did that Zwift World Series 2024, 2025. So just this last year. So I just started, and not this past fall because it wasn't, the Zwift had canceled the Zwift World Series, but I just did it that last year, and that was kind of my foray into it. I did the community Zwift games, I think it was 2 years ago, and I thought like, oh, this is really fun to be racing and be competitive, and I'm getting better. So I joined a team and did that Zwift World Series and decided to do the MyWhoosh USA Nationals and Sunday Race Club starting just about a year ago, I guess. So just really at the tail end of all that.
So was it your husband that then introduced you to Zwift? How did you get involved in Zwift in the first place?
A friend of mine here that I ride with in real life all the time, she had gotten really into Zwifting during the pandemic and had been racing kind of at an elite level. And she would talk about it all the time. I thought like, I don't know about this. Like, I hate riding the trainer. The trainer's terrible. Like when I was pregnant with the boys, I would ride the trainer for 45 minutes every day, just watching an episode of TV at like 100 watts. It was just torture. And I thought there's no way I could ever get into doing this for hours like you are. And then I got, kicker trainer and realized like, oh, this is actually extremely engaging. And now the time just kind of, I can go for hours and don't notice the time passing at all. So yeah, it was mainly like her talking about it. Just it fit into my lifestyle so much better, because if I want to be riding for 2.5 hours, over the summer, I think when I was getting back into cycling after having the twins, I was riding outside from like 5 to 7, and then it was starting to get colder and darker once we were into like October, November, and that's when I started Zwifting and realized like, well, I can still ride for a good chunk of time, but it has to be inside.
So Emma, I can see the headline now, from 45 minutes in the turbo trainer during pregnancy to the live event final stage in Abu Dhabi.
I have a picture of myself when I was like 36 weeks pregnant with the twins, with my like enormous stomach, and I've got the bib shorts like pulling out my stomach. But it's great when you're pregnant because you can't feel how heavy you are. You're just sitting there and you're like stalwart.
Absolutely. So I went and did some of the research and found you on Zwift Power. And your first race wasn't until March of 2024. And you didn't jump into the deep end until the Zwift World Series Open Qualifier Race 2 in October of 2024. You came in 7th in that race with some pretty big names: Kate McCarthy, Lucy Charles Barkley, Jackie Godby, and ahead of several other racers to earn that spot in the Zwift World Series Race 2. When did you realize that you had the talent to compete with basically the best girls in the world?
I was pretty competitive outside before having kids, and in the area that I live in the Bay Area, there's a lot of like really top level cyclists. So we have some climbs that are on Watopia. Actually, there's a climb portal that Old La Honda Road. Old La Honda is just my local climb. So I've been pretty competitive and like chasing times up the local hills or things like that. And I think I knew just based on like what I had been able to do outside and like my rankings on some of these local climbs, I was like, I can, be up there with the best. And yeah, I don't know. I think I just hadn't really been able to stack training bricks that much until the boys were like 2 and kind of started putting it together more consistently.
I just love that story. There's so many people that have really similar stories, Nicole. You were good at something happened in your life, you transitioned, you then came to cycling esports, and all of a sudden you're right up. Did you ever have a clue when you started on Zwift back in those, I was going to say back in the early days, we're talking about 2.5 years ago. Did you have any idea when you started on Zwift that you had the potential to get to where you are, or even that you thought you would become world champion finalist?
I don't know that I like had that big of thoughts, but I definitely thought of it as being a possibility. Like my friend that kind of had introduced me to Zwift, Catherine Curie, she had raced like at the elite level and had raced in these championship races. And I thought like, I could do it too if I really was training. And I thought like, I'm never going to be a, in real life professional cyclist, but maybe I can be a professional cyclist at this virtual cycling. I thought, yeah, she's a good friend of mine who lives, nearby, and I've been riding with her in real life for a long time. She was a real life pro, and now she leads a group ride, or she leads several group rides around here that I do, and we ride together on Zwift and in real life. So it's fun to have both of those. Early Premier League ZRL, she was doing that and like the elite level Zwift racing during the pandemic. So I thought like, Catherine's doing it. I feel like I could do this.
Yeah, that's interesting that you had that yardstick to measure yourself. Finished in the top 10 in that Zwift World Series race. So that's a pretty amazing rapid trajectory from the first race to compete with the best in the sport in 8 months. It's pretty amazing. It talks to, I think, just the way you approach things, which seems to be all or nothing.
Yeah, I definitely am like just going to send it, see how it goes. The nice thing about cycling esports is other than traveling to Abu Dhabi, it's an extremely low stakes every race, right? Like probably I didn't pay anything to participate. You just show up. I didn't have to be away all day. If it goes terribly and I bonk, it's fine. I don't need to it's not like I rode over to the ocean and bonked and have to get myself home or something like that. There's kind of it's very low stakes in a way, right? You kind of have nothing to lose. So.
Well, let's just continue with the timeline of your evolution as an elite cycling esports racer, because like you said, you started on Zwift, but you did transition to MyWhoosh and the Sunday Race Club. I think I did a little check after Sunday Race Club last week. You've done 35 Sunday Race Club Sundays, and that started around March 2025. Interesting. And I do ask this question a lot of our guests. We haven't had a guest that comes from the west coast of the USA to ask this question to yet, because obviously Sunday Race Club, I assume Sunday Race Club with our USA and Canadian riders being around 2 a.m. in the morning. What time is it for you for Sunday Race Club, Nicole? And is it late enough that you don't have to go to bed, or early enough, or how does it all work?
Yeah, so it's been midnight since the time change in November. Before that, it was at 1 a.m. I started last year during Ramadan when it was 8 a.m. And that was that March where it was like Zwift games were happening on the Saturdays and then SRC was happening on the Sundays at like 8 or 9 a.m. So I started last March during Ramadan just because it kind of seemed like everybody was doing Zwift games and then they're doing SRC the next day. So I thought, let's try it. And then after that, I went to 1 a.m. and I thought like, well, I'll just try it for a month or so to see how it fits into my life. And actually the 1 a.m., the midnight feels a lot worse than 1 a.m. for some reason, but the 1 a.m. is actually pretty good. Like I go to bed like 5 o'clock on Saturday. I wake up like maybe 11:30, start kind of caffeinating myself. But it's kind of nice because I'm not leaving my husband with the kids for a super long stretch of time. I just go to bed a bit early and he kind of reads the kids and puts them to bed. And then I wake up in the middle of the night and totally out of it and just have this very surreal experience of racing from my attic really hard and then kind of try to go back to bed and can't go back to sleep because I had too much caffeine. And then I just start my Sunday and it's kind of like nothing happened. So it actually fits, that midnight racing actually fits pretty well in my schedule just in terms of not disrupting our weekends. And I also think there's something about it being so surreal in the middle of the night that I can just kind of switch on and go. And
That's quite a sacrifice, first of all. If you were to ask any pro athlete whether they would race at midnight, they would probably laugh at you, right? There isn't a lot of opportunity in our sport to race at the highest level. But there's also the added motivation of prize purses. You're not technically working now. There's a lot of money on offer. What would you say is what motivates you to make that sacrifice to basically race in the middle of the night and show up to the line? I guess not every week, right? You only do a couple a month at this point.
Yeah, I usually do, just the 2 qualifiers a month, just kind of to keep the sleep deprivation in check a little bit. We'll see with Ramadan, I'll probably do all those. We'll see. But the 8 races, I think, are actually going to be more stressful for me than the middle of the night ones, just because, the kids are going to be awake. And if someone uses the microwave, the Wi-Fi is going to get interrupted. The middle of the night, it is a sacrifice. But if I were to do like a local road race, it would be 8 or 9 a.m. on a Saturday, 2 hours from here. And I would drive for 2 hours to race against like 5 other women. Maybe, you get a t-shirt if you place in the top 5. And like, I do really love the t-shirts that I won from Velo Promo over the years, but that would be my whole Saturday. That would be like an 8-hour thing where I would be gone. And then I'd be feeling bad, like, oh, I've left the family to go do what? Like, for what? It's like not, some races are more competitive than others, but the local race scene around Northern California has really dwindled over the past couple of years. So the level of competition just isn't the same as, the level of competition in the Sunday Race Club is incredible. It's the best in the world. Every single week you're racing against and just, incredibly challenging racing. So for me, it is a sacrifice, but I don't know. I don't even know that I would call it a sacrifice. It's just kind of the best way for me to have really high level racing. It's a really low barrier entry. I have everything. It's just upstairs. Yeah, it's just fun. And it just feels kind of like a privilege to be able to race against the best women in the world just on any random Sunday, very early morning. So
yeah, it just seems like it just fits your lifestyle better, which we do the thing that fit our lives, and you're going to where the competition is. And I can certainly see that would be very appealing to a high-level athlete like you. You and often find ourselves riding together. We have the same group of friends on Zwift. I ride with the dirt guys, and you seem to be riding with them quite often. It's actually really fun on Sunday mornings when you jump over to the ride that we do on Sunday mornings after you've raced SRC, and I get to ask you how you went, and it's pretty cool. And it's also very apparent that you're well-liked. You have a lot of fans in these rides, and I think it's a combination of a couple things. I think that people watch you race, and they realize the grit and the tenacity that you race with. And I think they're also marvel at the fact that you're basically putting out the same power that most of the guys on these rides are doing. Like I checked your stats and you're doing 300 watts for 20 minutes, which is me on a very, 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 very good day. How would you describe your racing style?
Yeah, I feel like I'm not a very patient racer. And I just know I've been working on trying to improve like my really top end punch, but I know I just don't have that, especially compared to the women I'm racing against. My top end power is just hilariously bad. So I don't know. I feel like in a team final race, we go in with a plan and I'm going to do absolutely whatever I should to help the team have the best result. But in just a qualifier race, again, I kind of go in most of the time with it's just another workout and I'll just ride hard when the opportunity presents itself and see what happens. And if it goes terribly and I blow up, it kind of doesn't matter. And I really enjoy just working hard and pushing myself. My husband likes to tell me I was talking about the race last Sunday where I ended up not kind of in any planned way, but I kind of like pushed after the sprint point and Mika jumped and was there. And I thought like, well, Mika had tried to break away last week. Like, I bet she'd probably work with me. So we worked together pretty well. And I was talking to my husband afterwards. I was like, oh, yeah, it was so fun. Like we worked and I kind of matched my power PRs or was like 1 watt higher than my like 30-minute, 45-minute PR. And he's like, well, it sounds like you did all the work. And I was like, no, I didn't do all the work. Yeah, I'm just not terribly patient oftentimes. Certainly not as like tactically savvy as some people. And I feel like if I'm like not redlining, I'm not racing, I guess. So I really just I don't want to like wait around for the sprint at the end because I'm going to lose the sprint anyways. So I'd rather just go for it and see. So
yeah, I did take a look at your power profile and the curve is pretty flat. That's not a surprise to you, Nicole. But it also means that when I watch you race, that you're never out of it, right? If you get gapped, you fall behind, the race isn't over for you. You're going to battle back. And I think that that's the thing that's really endearing. And it also came true during the qualifiers for the Worlds, which we're going to talk about a little bit later.
And I have to say, that breakaway with Mika was absolutely brilliant on Sunday. And at one point in the commentary box, we were looking at each other going, I'm not sure they're going to bring that gap back. This could be it. It was absolutely
the time gaps
brilliant.
on MyWhoosh are so kind of unpredictable sometimes. Like you'll look at them and it'll change 20 seconds and like a minute. And I never really trust the time gap. So I just kind of like kept pushing and yeah.
Yeah, they're different to Zwift because it depends on the train you're on as well. It's a different way of calculating it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, and I have to agree with you. You mentioned the team competition and your team as well. I love the end of month team competition on Sunday Race Club.
Yeah,
because it really does bring out those tactics in the teams that you were just talking about. And it's been really hotting up in category 1 lately, or shall we say. How does your team, the Sweat Sensations, use those strengths that you've just talked about, along with the rest of the team, when you discuss strategy and in-race tactics and you execute those end-of-the-month races?
Yeah, so I'm definitely not, the primary strategist. As I said, maybe my racing strategy is not always the most sound. But yeah, we have a WhatsApp group and we'll, touch base the days going into the race and try to come up with a plan of, what optimally we'll try to do and kind of what each person is going to keep in mind. And then we're, connected on a call during the race and just communicating as to what we should be doing where. And for me, I think that's like the team part of it is just the most fun. I wish that there was some sort of like a team something more frequently, or like the MyWhoosh Championships when it was that week-long stage with the team. I thought that was just like, I was trying to think of like what my like favorite racing of the year was. And I feel like that week was probably my favorite, just like doing it together with the team and having the strategy and, working together, I think is just really fun.
Yeah, it has really been hotting up, as I mentioned, on the Sunday Race Club in that category 1, because for a long time, it was you guys, the Sweat Sensations, versus Ablock International, Kate and Al on that New Zealand, a New Zealand-led team, only because the world champion is on it. It's not really a New Zealand-led team. There's a whole range of people from around the world on it. But it was the Sweat Sensations and Ablock International. And the two of you, those two teams, you guys were going head-to-head at the end of every month. But shall we say, in the last couple of months, the FCC Endorphins, the Fem Cycle Collab crew, have got together, haven't they? And Tomasi, Ulberg, Gallegos, Koinsonen have all come together. And now really there's 3 teams going head-to-head, isn't there? And has that brought an added dimension in for you? Because I know it, I look at it and I think, something a little bit different, because 3 teams really battling now rather than the 2.
Yeah, the finals race last month, I think that was my first SRC where I think it was the first time that Mary Kate didn't win finals when she, there were like a couple of weeks where she skipped, but I think it was both the first week where she didn't win SRC and it was the first month where Ablock hadn't gotten first in the team competition. So it really was a very different finals race to a lot of the other ones. And the course was also, it was similar to in December, we had the Zurich course, but kind of the shorter, punchier climbs for most of the months that I've been doing for the past year. I feel like it's been kind of longer climbs. So it's been maybe more predictable outcome. Whereas last month it was, pretty full gas racing from the gun and pretty aggressive. So yeah, definitely. It's just exciting to have different opportunities for team strategy and just fun to see kind of the races playing out in a slightly different way.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching the tactic evolve as we move through, which will be February into March.
Yeah, so you mentioned that Kate McCarthy didn't win that race. I think it's interesting to note that she was training for the New Zealand Road Race Nationals, which she actually made the podium in, which was pretty amazing. But speaking of the world champion, your development culminated in your qualifying for the World Championships in Abu Dhabi this past November. You were one of 5 finalists to represent the U.S. at the World Championships there. The U.S. and Sweden were the largest teams with 5 riders each. It was a gritty performance in the qualifier where you finished 15th out of 133 starters. I was watching it and I saw that I guess you made a little bit of a bobble and was shot out the back. I'm thinking to myself, oh, geez, there it goes for Nicole. But in your signature fashion, you clawed back in and you really had a great race. Was it ever in doubt, or did you always have one of those slots pegged for yourself?
Oh, I I definitely didn't think like I was going to get a spot. The first stage, that climbing stage, that type of race suits me more. But the way that the points were allocated, it didn't feel like there was a huge kind of return on investment for staying out there longer. You were only accumulating kind of smaller amounts of points. Whereas like the last stage of all those sprints, it was like, a bunch of points every lap. And kind of as the stages went along, I feel like they suited my power profile less well. But I have pretty good endurance. So, me in a fatigued state, I had a better chance. So I thought I had a decent chance. I thought, if it was just a scratch race format like Sunday Race Club, and it was the top 20, I was pretty confident I would get a spot. But with the 3 race format, I definitely wasn't confident that I would get a spot. I think going into the last stage, I was like, maybe an 11th or something like that. And then I think I kind of tried to attack on the second lap or something like that. And I had like a 2-second gap and I was like, well, I'll just keep going. And like, maybe I'll get through the sprint first. And like, no, like the pack just like came flying past me and I was shot out the back. And then I was just watching. You could see the real-time points, what place you were. And I just saw myself slipping down. I kept riding as hard as I could, but I saw the points and I was like, oh, I'm just going to end up outside of the top 20. And like, of course. But so I guess I ended up 15th. So
when your friend first introduced you to Zwift, did you ever think that it would get you a trip to Abu Dhabi to race against the 20th best women in the world?
No, definitely thought it would. I never thought that it would involve, a trip literally across the world to be racing in person. I thought like, maybe, the Zwift World Series, that was like, starting to do that was very exciting and feeling like, wow, I'm really like racing against the best in the world. This is really incredible. But I definitely never thought I'd be traveling to Abu Dhabi.
Speaking about those world championships, you finished 10th on stage 1, 11th on stage 2, and 15th on stage 3, which I guess is kind of consistent with your riding style and what you mentioned.
Down, yeah.
Yeah. So you came in 13th overall, which is certainly not anything to be upset about. How did you enjoy the experience overall? I would assume that was certainly something that was new for you, the traveling, the being treated like a real pro. How would you characterize that experience?
Yeah, I really loved the experience. Just being able to meet all the people that I've been racing against it's totally surreal again, right? And being 12-hour time change, your body clock's all messed up and like not sleeping enough. The whole experience just kind of, in retrospect, feels like a weird fever dream. But just being able to meet these people, you know what they look like. You maybe even know what their voices sound like from hearing them on podcast or something like that. But then you see them and everyone's a little bit different height than you expect. It's just so bizarre to meet the people in real life and really like, going into it, I didn't have any delusions that I was going to be winning, or top 5 or really even top 10. I thought like, if I could get closer to 10th than 20th, I thought that would be a good day for myself. But I really wanted to meet, the other racers and enjoy the experience and not like prove myself, but kind of just show like, the numbers that I do at home are basically the same as I'm doing in person. Like, I am who I say I am. I don't know that there were people that were suspicious of me going into it. I don't think I'm quite good enough that people would be terribly suspicious, but, I think I performed slightly better, I guess, in the in-person finals than I did in the semis. And I was happy with how the race went. I didn't get dropped on the 3rd stage until much closer to the end. So I was kind of determined to race a little bit smarter that time than I had in the semis. And the pack dynamics were easier with 20 as opposed to, 100 or something like that. So yeah, I was happy with how I did in the races, and meeting people was really fun. Just, chatting with people and getting to know them. And yeah, I feel like that was really a highlight.
So I have to ask the question, is 2026 Worlds on your schedule for this year?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Again, it's like, it's literally halfway across the world for me. So it was, I left home on like a Tuesday evening and arrived Thursday morning and went straight over for the, pictures and stuff like that. So it just getting there took so long. If I lived in Europe, I would say like, yeah, absolutely, I want to do it again. But being based on the West Coast of the US, I'm not sure.
Well, you'll keep us all on tenterhooks.
I'll see what the format of the races is. If it's kind of similar to this year, where it's like maybe my power profile isn't quite as competitive, and I think I'll do about the same. I'm not sure that I'll do it. Just like my parents came and stayed with my kids so that we could go, and just was like for me to outsource everything I do on a day-to-day basis is kind of a big undertaking. So I'm not sure that I'm prepared to do that again.
Well, it was wonderful to watch, and being part of that 5-woman USA squad, Nicole. You know, Kristen Kolczynski was the highest placed of you all in 6th, then Elise Gallegos, yourself, you know, smack bang in the middle of the pack of the 5 of you who went, Alexi Snova and then Jackie Godby. It was a really strong showing all round, and it must have been fabulous to have. I mean, you've talked about the team environment on Sunday Race Club, but it must have been great to go team of 5.
Yeah, I think it was like Thursday night or something. We kind of got together, had dinner. Yeah, just to connect with them all was really neat. You really kind of get a sense of who these people are from racing against them, but to actually get to meet them is a really cool experience. So
do tell me, the Sunday Race Club wasn't your first race on MyWhoosh, was it? Was it not the Echelon Racing League?
Yeah, I did 2 of the Echelon Racing League races. You had to do at least 1 to qualify for the Nationals last year. And then I did the National Championship race. Then I did the Nationals.
So you actually raced on MyWhoosh for the first time to qualify for the Nationals race then?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting that it evolved into that. Well, you did, because you finished 2nd behind the 2-time national champion, your teammate, Kristen Kolczynski. Was that a proud moment for you?
Yeah, it was kind of a weird race. I think there were like 7 of us or 8, and I was just starting on MyWhoosh. I'm still not a terribly like punchy rider, but I was like even less so. A year ago, my 1-minute power was worse. Yeah, so it was just kind of like a strange race. I was happy to finish 2nd, I suppose, but when you race against a field so small, it's not the same as, a field of like 30 or something like that. It's just not really the same kind of feel of a race. It just feels very strange to be racing against such a small group. And then it kind of blew up sometime during the race and then kind of just turned into like a couple individual time trials. And I was just kind of like redlining, chasing Kristen as hard as I could. And yeah, so I'd say like proud, but it like the small races always just, it really feels different.
Yeah, I guess that kind of gets me to where I'm going now with this year, the Echelon Racing League, now known as the USA Cycling Esports Series, and the National Championship moved to TrainingPeaks Virtual and will remain there under a multi-year partnership. Despite you saying that you specifically went to MyWhoosh to qualify for the Nationals and obviously highlight that event, you chose not to participate in the Nationals on TrainingPeaks Virtual this year. We should note that Jackie Godby won her 3rd national championship, and Neil Fryette, who also was on the stage in Abu Dhabi, won for the first time, tied with Zach Nair, which was a pretty close race with them. And quite a few of your other teammates also chose not to race in the Nationals, which is, when you really think about it, it's our nation's biggest cycling esports race, right? Including the defending champion, Kristen Kolczynski. She also chose not to line up. What is the reason why you didn't race the Nationals this year when you did last year?
Yeah, I feel like the barrier to entry just felt like kind of very high. They did at some point throughout the Echelon series, they said, well, actually, you don't have to pay for it, I think, and you'll get free like TrainingPeaks Virtual access. But at the outset, it was like, you're going to need to be paying for TrainingPeaks to access this TrainingPeaks Virtual. So that was somewhat dissuasive. And then we otherwise have no need for a USA cycling license. So that was kind of another thing, thinking like, do I really need this? And doing it last year, racing against like 8 people, I thought like, I feel like we're just going to have even fewer people this year. It was just kind of like hard to get excited about. And I didn't have kind of any sense of like what the race would be like until kind of later. I think the first weekend of the Echelon Racing Series was like for Worlds. Yeah, and by then I had kind of, I've gotten into the routine of doing the Sunday Race Club in the middle of the night on Saturday night, Sunday morning. So to do like a Saturday 9 a.m. race, it seemed like a much bigger investment from like our weekend standpoint, right? It's like I need to figure out who's going to be with the kids, and it's going to take up this whole block of Saturday morning for the race. And I kind of like read through the verification stuff, and it just, again, it seemed like a pretty big barrier to entry. Talked to a couple people and they didn't think that they were going to do it. And I just wasn't super excited about racing against a really small field and all the kind of time it might take to get used to another different platform.
It's really interesting, Nicole, and it's a really interesting question, if you don't mind, just to explore a little bit further with you, because you've talked about things like, you're fitting realistically pro-level cycling, well, it is pro-level cycling, into time-crunched world where you've got other competing priorities. You want good racing, so you're talking about wanting a good-sized race field to race against, and you're searching for those opportunities, and you're finding them in some places and you're not finding them in others. So it sounds like you're trying to balance and juggle the priorities that command your time, but still achieve the racing that you're looking for. And the reason I'm trying to pull that together is because Chris and I often on the podcast talk about the future of cycling esports and elite cycling esports. And one of the things that we've talked about over the last 12 months is sort of the evolution of the Cycling Esports World Cup and the fact that there's the potential for World Cups in the future and UCI points and those types of things. Chris has picked up the story on the Escape Collective, outlining the recent UCI rule changes to prepare for that sort of eventual World Cup and rankings, which I'm sort of assuming the elite racing community would probably be quite excited about, and that there was that opportunity. But the concept for that vision really is for it probably to be multi-platform. MyWhoosh, TrainingPeaks Virtual, perhaps Zwift or Ruvi. And it's interesting to hear you talk about being time crunched, having priorities, wanting elite racing and a good-sized field. Do you think sort of a multi-platform model would be a challenge for a World Cup? What are your thoughts on that sort of model going forward, given the fact that the USA Nationals have gone from Zwift to MyWhoosh to TrainingPeaks Virtual, and people have chosen, you're talking about field sizes and choosing?
Yeah, I'm not, up on the numbers, but I think the participation in the USA Nationals kind of has gone down as it went from Zwift to MyWhoosh to TrainingPeaks Virtual. I think it was kind of declining with each of those, and I don't know if it's just with people, moving away from the pandemic. Maybe there's kind of fewer people that are racing at the elite level anyways. I'm not sure if maybe that's just a correlation. But yeah, with any new platform, there's a barrier to entry, right? Whether it be cost or not, but you have to, do the verification and kind of get everything, up and going from that perspective, and takes some time to learn the dynamics. And I ride on Zwift a lot. I don't ride as much on MyWhoosh, so just the dynamics are different. And, I'm learning the MyWhoosh dynamics better now, but it takes a lot of riding to really feel like you kind of understand how your avatar moves and how to feel like you can anticipate what's going to happen when you pedal and whatnot. So I feel like having a bunch of different platforms, I feel like it would probably become more challenging to get more people excited about doing all of them. Yeah, I think if there was, a buy-in from the group of elite racers, I would love to have elite racing back on Zwift. I don't know that that's something that they're interested in doing, but the Zwift World Series was super fun and the Zwift Games was really fun. So if something that was involving Zwift racing, I would enjoy that again. But yeah, for me, it's kind of like I really enjoy racing at the top level and pushing myself. I don't think I'm going to be world champion. So for me, it's more about, I really enjoy this competitive racing as kind of an outlet and another part of my life, but I'm not going to it's less about the results for me than it is about just the opportunity to push myself and see what I can do and see how I can improve, and that, rather than I'm going to get, X place or something like that, because the external motivation is really not as much. I feel like I'd just be setting myself up for disappointment if I was looking for some specific place or that kind of thing. So it's more just enjoying
It's really interesting to hear you say that, but I have to say, as a viewer and a fan, Nicole, never discount what you do on that bike, because if only the top 3 riders in the world chose to turn up for the World Championships, it'd be a very boring World Championships.
Yeah. No, I'm really happy that I'm part of the pack, and occasionally making the race more exciting. I'm really happy that I can do that. It feels like a really cool opportunity.
If you sort of look at the World Cup vision in terms of sort of as the future of cycling esports, are you in favour of that type of development for the sport?
I guess in terms of development for the sport, I'm not sure how much of that is people watching it or people participating in it. I guess I'm not sure kind of what aspect of that.
It's not an easy question, Nicole.
No, it's not an easy question at all.
Trust me,
I also don't really have my ear to the ground, right? So I don't really know kind of
It's not an easy question.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's one of those things, isn't it? If you feel you're getting enough elite racing and enough racing for you now, do you need more? Do you know what I mean? It's a really different conundrum depending upon the personal situation you find yourself in.
Yeah. So for me, I don't really feel like I need something super different or more. But I'm on the older side. I'm not hoping that this is my number one profession. So maybe slightly different for me versus somebody else. And I just don't kind of know enough about the industry or how sport is evolving, I guess.
I was going to say, some of those women on that stage in Abu Dhabi have been in their early 50s. You've got a long way to go yet, Nicole.
Yeah.
It really is an easy question. Emma and I have been trying to find an answer for quite some time, as have a lot of other people. From what I've taken from this conversation with you is that cycling esports is different for you. It's a way for you to scratch that competitive itch and to be involved. And I think that you might not give yourself as much credit the fact that you have a lot of innate talent and that you're able to do the things that you want to do, because there's a very long list of people that can't perform at the level that you do. But we like to finish up the podcast with like a big picture question, and learning where cycling esports is for you. It's not necessarily the results. It's more being able to compete at that high level. What does the next season have in store for you as far as goals and your vision of where you'd like to be?
Yeah, I've really been enjoying SRC, so plan to continue doing that. I really enjoyed the MyWhoosh Championships last year, so I guess I'm hoping that they do that again this year as well. Just in terms of something, comparing that to Worlds, it is a lot easier for me to just be doing racing from home as opposed to traveling to race. So yeah, I'm just hoping to continue to get a bit better compared to myself, and I do take my training very seriously, but I also try not to get too hung up on the results, I guess. I'm not trying to you know what I mean? I do really train hard. So it's not that I'm I don't train. I just show up and do whatever. It's I train really hard, but I just try not to put kind of too much pressure on the results. Outside of when it's a team setting and I'm trying to do something with the team, then I really will be focused on what's best for the results, but just try to enjoy the process more than focus on the outcome, I guess.
And then when you go to tuck your kids in at night, they don't really care too much as to whether you won SRC or not.
Yeah, no, they don't care. The day of the semifinals for Worlds, the race was at 10 a.m. And of course, randomly school was closed that day. So my husband took the day off work and took the kids out to some nature preserve. And one of the kids had a fever and then he threw up in the car on the way home. So literally right after I finished that third stage, my husband's calling me. He's I'm in the alley. Can you come get Wilco? He's covered in vomit. So I'm got this kid and just holding him off. And I'm I just finished and qualified for Worlds and they don't care. I still have this puke covered child that I need to clean off. So
I love it. Elite cycling esports, real life.
Yeah. So the middle of the night thing for now is really working for me, just because I know that, people really should be asleep and I can do my race and then kind of go about the rest of my life. And
well, long may nighttime racing continue. That's all I can say in your household, because you are a joy to watch week in, week out, Nicole. And it's been absolutely fabulous to have you join us on the Virtual Velo podcast. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, you can, of course, subscribe to the Virtual Velo podcast on your favourite podcast provider and, of course, on YouTube. You can follow me, Emma Martin, on Instagram at biking_Emma and Chris at the Zwift. You can catch me putting words to the action this weekend on the MyWhoosh Sunday Race Club. You can head over to thezmunicay.com and also please become a member of the Escape Collective to join the conversation and support independent cycling esports journalism. We will have interesting guests from the world of cycling esports joining us very soon. We are indeed back for the year. If you think the gap, you think the break was it, we've got you sorted. We are back for 2026. Thank you to Nicole Meyer for sharing her insights, and to you, our listener, tuning in. February is Heart Month, and Chris will remind you to please take care of your heart. Get a coronary artery calcium scan. As always, I'll tell you to enjoy your cycling. Ride safely. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.